If you are not legally protected in your business, you are leaving money on the table. Hey, I get it. The legal side of business can feel intimidating, but the good news is it doesn't have to be. If you want to build your business on a strong foundation, and if you want to know that your rights are protected when the unexpected happens with a client or a customer, then it's time to get legally protected. This means no more using free contracts that you downloaded off of the internet. This means partnering with a law firm that actually believes in your vision and can help you achieve it. This means legally protecting your brand so that no one can steal your good ideas. There are a lot of ways to grow and scale, but if you want to grow a strong business, it's time to get legally protected. If you're listening and resonating with this, then my signature service, the Legal Upgrade, just might be perfect for you. The Legal Upgrade is a straightforward, structured process to give your business the legal protection that it needs to thrive. Click the link in the show notes and schedule a call with me today. Hello and welcome to the Legal Upgrade Podcast. I'm your host, licensed attorney Christian Hammond. This podcast breaks down the legal side of business to reveal key legal strategies that can help you take your business to the next level. Please note that none of the following is legal, tax, investment, financial, or medical advice. Without further ado, let's get into the show. When you hire people to create content for your business, how can you be sure that they aren't copying from somewhere else? How do you know that that content that you're about to post to your social media or maybe even turn in as a final deliverable to a client doesn't have anything that could get you in trouble with copyright law? What are the best practices when you are hiring and working with graphic designers, web designers, animators, creative directors, or artistic directors? Thank you so much to everyone who is joining. And this is the topic we are going to cover today because as business owners, unless you have the skills yourself, when content needs to be created in your business, which is pretty much all the time, you are hiring somebody else to do it, which is great, except if that person is creating something that might get you in trouble with copyright law. And so that is the topic we are covering today, how to make sure that that is not an issue for you in your business. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Christian Hammond. I'm a licensed attorney based in Washington, D.C., and I specialize in helping small businesses and entrepreneurs get legally protected so they can grow profitable and sustainable businesses. And if you are tuning into this, I encourage you to grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, or grab your digital notebook and take notes because this is going to be super helpful for you, really no matter what type of business owner you are, because whether you are having content created for your own marketing needs or whether you are creating content for a client, if you're hiring somebody else to do it, this is going to be a super, super helpful episode for you. So I really encourage you to take notes and lean into this topic. So, like I said, as business owners, we are often hiring other people to create content for us. Graphic designers, website designers, animators, creative directors, artistic directors, and many other types of artists. And maybe that content is for your own use in marketing materials, or maybe it's for you to ultimately hand over to a client. But regardless of whether that content is for you in your own business or whether you're going to be ultimately turning in that content to somebody else, the fact is you're hiring somebody else to do it. You were not there for the entire creative process. And how can you know that they didn't copy the content from somewhere else? How can you know that there's not something in that content that could get you in trouble, that could get you, worst case scenario, sued for copyright infringement? How do you know that these things are not happening? And this is a really important question because copyright infringement is a big deal financially. If your business gets caught in copyright infringement and you get sued, the financial penalties are really severe. Copyright infringement penalties are anywhere from $750 to $30,000 per infringement. Okay, not necessarily just a one time fee, but per infringement. And actually, if the other person can prove that your copying was willful, intentional, those penalties can go all the way up to $150,000. So we're talking about a lot of money here. So we want to be pretty sure as business owners that our business can't be liable for copyright infringement because if so, we're potentially talking about a lot of money. And the thing with copyright is that it does not matter whether you did it on purpose or not. So often you'll see people add these disclaimers and say things like, hey, I don't own this, or hey, I'm not trying to claim any rights in this. But the reality is that those disclaimers don't really have any actual legal meaning. I mean, honestly, if you're almost kind of confessing and admitting that you knew that you didn't own this thing and yet you intentionally chose to use it anyway. So often I see those disclaimers, and a little known fact is that having a disclaimer like that is not a protection from copyright infringement lawsuits. Having a disclaimer like that is not a shield from someone else saying, hey, that's my stuff, and you used it in your business without my permission. So this is a big deal because copyright infringement, the penalties, the financial penalties are high. It doesn't matter if you quote unquote did it on purpose or not necessarily. Um, and it also matters because if you're going to be paying someone to create content for your business, if you're going to pay somebody to do a job, well, you want that end product to be something you can use. You want that end product to be something that your business can own, that your business can claim ownership in, that your business can own the copyright in. And if that content is a copy from somewhere else, if that content was not used with permission, in the legal world, we call that licensing. If that content was not properly licensed, well, then you might have just paid for it, but it might not have a lot of use in your business. It might not be something you can safely use, and it might not be something that your business can actually rightfully own. So, this is a big deal because the financial penalties are really high. It doesn't matter whether or not you did it on purpose. And this is just about protecting your investment. You're paying somebody to do a job, and you want to be able to actually use that work product that they are creating. So, as business owners, this is a big deal, and that's exactly why we're talking about it today. Now, as a business owner, you might be thinking, okay, but I'm a small business owner. Would anyone really come after me? Would anyone really try to sue my business for copyright infringement? And the answer is yes, they would. Because as we just talked about, there can be a lot of money in a copyright lawsuit. If you win a copyright lawsuit, if you can prove that somebody else used your stuff, um, you can get a lot of money. So, because there's potentially a lot of money at stake, yeah, people are willing to sue for that because they want their money. And this is actually pretty big business. Copyright lawsuits are big business. People actually have a financial incentive to catch you copying their stuff. And before the internet and before software and before all these different tools, it wasn't necessarily easy to catch somebody else copying you. Maybe a friend had to tell you, or you had to see it published somewhere. But these days, with the internet and other tools, it's a lot easier to catch somebody. You can literally take your photograph, plug it into Google reverse image search, and Google will tell you all the different places that that photograph is being used. And then you can look and see who's using that photograph without your permission. So, copyright lawsuits are big business. There's a lot of money at stake. And on top of that, with software and the internet and other tools, it's actually easier for people to find out if you're copying them. They have tools at their disposal to catch you. And so, that yes, even as a small business owner, it is a realistic risk that somebody could come after you for copyright infringement. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to end up in a lawsuit necessarily. Most of these cases do not actually go to court. What happens in real life is, someone sends you a letter and they say, hey, we caught you copying. Pay us $20,000, pay us $50,000, pay us $100,000, whatever it is, to make this go away. Now, depending on how big your business is, maybe that's not a lot of money to you. But to many of us, a $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 bill is not what we are looking for this year in our business. So these are the kinds of issues we are trying to avoid. Now, I see a question here in the comments. Curious to hear your thoughts. Digital packages. So, this is actually, those exact things are exactly what we are about to talk about. So, hold that question because that is what we're going to get to. So, these are the concerns. These are the kind of issues we want to avoid as business owners. Now, if you are not a creative, if you are not a professional artist, then as a business owner, you might be a little confused right now. You might be thinking, wait, how is it possible that something that, a designer created for me might have something, copied from somewhere else or not properly licensed from somewhere else? Well, when it comes to something being created, a lot of creatives, a lot of artists, a lot of professionals, they use stock content websites. This is getting to that question that you had on My Level Che. They use stock websites. There are websites where you can get stock photography, stock music, stock sound effects, design templates, all kind of graphics, icons, you name it. There are websites where you can get stock content, and often when you hire someone, they are using these stock websites. Those are the raw building blocks, and they are using those building blocks, combining them into unique formats, and creating that final piece of content for you. And so when you hire an animator, a graphic designer, an illustrator, when you hire a design professional, they are not necessarily going to their studio, putting pen to paper, and creating something out of thin air. These days, in the modern world, in the digital world, they are often using building blocks from a stock website, or at least starting there. Now, there is nothing wrong with that. These websites are awesome. They are great tools. At the end of the day, you're ending up with a great product. So there's nothing wrong with using these third-party websites. There's nothing wrong with using these design building blocks. The problem, the struggle, is that every single one of these websites has a different set of rules. Every single one of these websites has a different set of rules with what you can and cannot do with that stock content. And here is where people start to get into trouble. Because if you go onto these third-party websites, and I'm sure that you have seen them, the biggest thing on the webpage is royalty free, right? It's like royalty free content to use in your projects, royalty free content to use in your social media, royalty free content to use in your next marketing campaign. That's what they're advertising. And it is true, they do have content available, but there are rules. There are limitations, there are restrictions, and unfortunately, every single site has their own set of rules. And untangling that can be the more complicated part. And this is how people start to get into trouble. Because websites, for example, some of them, they only let you use the content for personal projects. You actually can't use the content for commercial things. So it's okay if it's for your own personal use, or sometimes they'll say it's okay if you're a nonprofit, or it's okay if you're a student. They are here to support students with their independent film projects. So those are okay, but some of these websites, you can't actually use the content for commercial use. Other websites will say, hey, it's okay if you use it for pre recorded content, but you can't use it for live content. So you can use it for a YouTube video, but you can't use it for a live stream. They'll make a difference between recorded content versus live content. Others will say, hey, it's cool if you want to use it on, social media, Instagram, X, or YouTube, but you can't use it for broadcast media. So they'll say, hey, you can't use it for radio. You can't use it for TV. Some will say, hey, it's okay to use it for commercial purposes, but not if there's going to be ads. And a lot of times, content you're creating these days is going to have ads. If you host a podcast, at some point, you probably thank your sponsor. If you have a successful Instagram page, then you're probably doing sponsorships. You're probably doing co-branding. You're probably doing collaborations with other brands, and those could be considered ads. So there are a ton of rules, and every single website has its own rules. And this is how people start to get into trouble. And if you are a professional artist, if you are a professional creator, if you do this for a living, you might think, well, I know I'm covered because I have a subscription. So most of these websites have subscription levels. Sometimes there's a personal level subscription and then a commercial level subscription for people who want to use it for business purposes. So you might be on here thinking, I'm good because I have a subscription. Well, not so fast. When's the last time you read the fine print to your commercial subscription? Because even if you have a commercial subscription, a lot of these websites put limits on how often you can use it, how many clients you can use it for. Again, whether it can be live or whether it needs to be recorded, whether there can be ads on the content or even around the content. I even saw one recently that specifically said, hey, it's cool to use our content for commercial purposes, except not if it's NFTs or for blockchain or other emerging technology. So even if you have a subscription, you might think you're in the clear, but oftentimes, even that subscription, or really all the time, even that subscription has limits. And again, this is where things start to get sticky, and this is where people start to get into trouble. Now, if you're a business owner listening to this and you hire designers, you hire animators, you hire creatives, you hire artists to create content, you might be thinking, wait a minute, is this really my responsibility? Like, I'm paying someone to do a job. Like, shouldn't it be their responsibility to make sure that their content is clear, their content is clean, it doesn't contain anything from anybody else, it doesn't have anything that could get us into trouble? And that's one answer to the question. Sure. And a lot of business owners do this. Many business owners will sign a contract with the artist or the creator or the designer, and that contract will have an indemnification clause. Indemnification is one of those really long legal words, but here's what it means. Indemnification means that if we get sued because of something you did, you are going to pay for all of our legal fees. That's all it means. That's what indemnification means. So a business owner will say to the artist, hey, if you create something for our next marketing campaign, if you create something for the next season of our TV show, if you create something for this deliverable we need to get into a client, if you put something in there that gets us in trouble, if you put something in there that gets us sued for copyright infringement, then you, the artist, you are going to pay our legal fees. So that's what indemnification means. And many business owners take that approach. And my response to that is, sure, you can have that in your contract. You can say, hey, it's your responsibility as the service provider to make sure that the product you are giving me is problem-free. Yes, you can absolutely do that. And in many cases, that's even a good idea. But let me challenge that thinking. Okay, you've shifted the responsibility, but just because it's technically not your responsibility doesn't mean it's not going to become your problem. In real life, if you use a piece of content, regardless of who created it, and that content has copyrighted work in there that is not cleared, that is not licensed, that you're not actually supposed to be using, it might not have been your responsibility, but guess what? You're the business owner, so now it's your problem. So I challenge that approach of just thinking, oh, it's not my responsibility, because ultimately, if you own the business, it's going to become your problem. And so, what I think is a good way to take the next step is to say, hey, why don't I, as the business owner, take the initiative to put some frameworks in place? Why don't I take the initiative to put a framework in place to make sure that the content coming into my business is clean, for lack of a better word? That the content coming into my business does not have copyright issues and is not going to have licensing issues. Why don't I take the initiative to make that happen? And I think that this is a really good approach to add on to having absolutely, you should have a good contract. Absolutely, that contract should have really good clauses in it. And a lot of times, indemnification is a clause that makes sense. But I would take the extra step and say, you know what, let's just be proactive about this. Let's just have a framework to make sure that this content is being created the right way. And this is really fresh on my mind because I just recently had a client, and this client had hired outside people to create content. And the content was doing really well. It was beautiful. It was eye-catching. It was engaging content. It was really, really great content. They did really amazing work. And they did such great work that this client was like, hey, we need to lock this down. We need to protect this. We need to make sure that our business has the copyright in this content. And after going through the content, I had to come back to the client and give them the bad news that I'm sorry, but I do not recommend copywriting this content in its current form, because that content had copyrighted assets from other places. It had, and yes, these had come from some of these stock websites. This had come from some of these websites that offer stock content as a service. And they even, I believe, had a subscription, but they had done things they were not allowed to do even with a subscription. And I had to give this person the tough news that, like, hey, we can't, I don't recommend copywriting this in this form because it could come back to bite you later. It could actually backfire. It could actually create a record that you did this when you weren't supposed to. So, this is why it's so important, because again, you are paying for this content. You are paying someone else to do a job. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to use that work product. But if that work product was not created correctly, it can become more of a problem than an asset to your business. And so, like I said, I think that there is a way that we can address this as business owners, and that is to take the initiative. You can sit down with the creative director or the designer or the artist you're about to hire. You can have a conversation. You can ask, hey, which websites do you use to source music? Which websites do you use to source photography? Who are you using to source sound effects, graphics, icons, all these different assets? You can have that conversation. And then you can look at those websites and you can look at the fine print, AKA the terms of service or the terms of use, and you can see, what do they allow? What do they not allow? Do they allow broadcast content or do they not? Do they allow social media content? Can I use it for commercial purposes? Can I have ads or sponsored content? Can I have can I use it for live content, or does it have to be pre-recorded? You can look through that. Or ideally, you have a business lawyer who can do this for you. Ideally, you have a business lawyer, but if not, you can look through the fine print and then you can decide, based on your budget, which websites your business can and can't work with. Because most of these websites, they'll have their general personal plan, they'll have their general commercial plan, but then they'll often have something called an enterprise plan. And that enterprise plan, will give you the rights to do pretty much whatever you want for the enterprise fee. But if you're working, and so if you have that budget, you can just go ahead and invest in that. But if you're working with a smaller budget, you can have that conversation. You can go through those websites and you can decide for your own business budget which websites can we work with and which ones can we not work with. And you can have that conversation and you can make sure whether it's an outside team or whether it's your in-house marketing team, you can have guidelines and a framework for who you source from and who you don't source from, and how that content gets used so that you, as the business owner, can have peace of mind and can make sure that you are not getting in trouble with copyright law as content is being created in your business. And I want to emphasize that if you're hearing this for the first time, you might be thinking about all the things that have been created for your business, and it might be kind of overwhelming. But I want to emphasize that this is not necessarily hard, but it is something that we have to put intentionality around. If we're not paying attention to it, if we're just letting it happen, if we're just not being really intentional about how content is being created for our businesses, well, then it's not, we're more likely to end up with a problem. We're more likely to one day get a cease and desist letter. We're more likely to end up in some copyright problems. But applying some intentionality to the process, having that conversation with the designer, the artist, the creative director, the animator can go so far in making sure that final product is not only beautiful and wonderful and within the specs you'd hoped for, but also something that your business can use without fear of getting in trouble with copyright law or having any other legal issues around intellectual property. Now, if this is something that resonates with you, if you are a business owner and you are working with either outside artists and designers, or maybe even your in-house marketing team, and you're realizing, I need to put this in place. I need a framework for my team. Maybe my team even needs some training on how copyright law works and how to make sure that they are not getting the business in trouble with the way they are sourcing content. If this is something that your business needs help with, then reach out. Send me a DM, get the conversation started. This is something that my law firm would be happy to help you with. So I hope this was really helpful for all of you today. I hope this was really valuable. I hope it was really actionable. And I'm always grateful to you guys who tune in live and watch here. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See you next time. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. The Legal Upgrade Podcast is a Bevel Law production. For more information about the Legal Upgrade, you can follow on Instagram at Bevel Law or find even more information on the website bevellaw.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. See you next time on the Legal Upgrade Podcast.